Assalamu alaikum guys, welcome to our second week of the Halaqa. Today's topic will be about seeking knowledge. So just some tips from last week from our teacher Mufti Zaid Khan. He wants us to be more discussion based, so please don't hesitate to ask questions during, and please don't yeah, and everybody please move up if you can. So he's gonna go over some questions about the questions. While he goes over them, in the meantime you can write your questions here during the Halaqa and then pass them forward. In the weeks following, the Google Forms will still be shared online on Facebook and the public brothers and sisters side of the pages, so please fill them out. Also, MAS is running a fundraiser for our Syrian refugees. What they're doing is they're having us sell roses for $5 rose. So buy a rose for yourself, your mother, your whole family, buy it for everybody. It's only $5. Any money you give, sisters you can give it to Tanha, brothers you can give it to Brother Ahmad. And lastly, a brother bought him some sandwiches this afternoon. They're in the back. What he wants you to do is take one home, each of you. If you find somebody on the way, like a homeless person who needs it, please give it to them. If you don't find anybody, then I guess you could have it, give it to your family or whatever. And that's pretty much it. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Whatever questions you have is right here. Whatever questions you have is right here. So, do you want this off? I mean, do you want this off so it's not as fun? No! You need to do it. You don't have to well on it. Yes, without that. Take your time, though. That's all right.
For me, thanks, bro.
All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man wala, amma ba'd. Okay, so we have a lot of questions to go through this. Okay, hopefully inshallah we'll be able to go through all of them. As mentioned, I would really like if people actually pitched in as well instead of having me talk for the next 1.5 hours, 2 hours. So, starting with the first question, how do you know if something is truly an istikhara sign? First of all, what do you guys think of istikhara? What do you think istikhara is?
It's a prayer. You pray Halaqa, and then you make the dua for istikhara, and you're asking Allah if the thing is good for you to bring it closer to you, and if it's not, then it's to take it away from you.
Okay, follow-up question. How do you think istikhara manifests itself?
Confidence. Or just like things working out.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so one misunderstanding about istikhara is that you get a very explicitly clear sign about what you're supposed to do or what you're supposed to get. So Sheikh Abdul Nasir from Qalam Institute has this wonderful clip on YouTube about an hour long about istikhara. But to give you a summary of it, you do istikhara after taking a number of steps yourself. So for example, if you are looking to buy a car, you first do all the research yourself according to your budget, according to how you want. After you narrow it down and you come to a number of choices, you ask people who own those cars, has this car worked out for you? What do you think about this, or what do you think about that? Or you ask somebody who actually knows about cars. If you're like me, and you really have no idea what goes on or what all the numbers mean when it comes to engines and yada yada yada, you don't know. So you ask an expert. You try to make an informed opinion based on what somebody who knows about it tells you. After that, you make istikhara. Istikhara is when you are, istikhara, the word literally means to ask good from Allah. What you are asking Allah is, oh Allah, out of everything that is in front of me, I am trying to make the best decision for myself. So, I want to be confident in the decision that I am making. So, a person prays 2 rakah salah, recites a particular dua, makes dua and goes to sleep. Istikhara does not manifest itself in you driving that car in your dreams. It's not the first thing you're going to see in the morning when you wake up and walk out of the house, like it goes on, like it's plastered on the side of a bus and angels in the background. No, it doesn't happen like that. Right? You become confident in the decision that you are making. You are content with the decision you want to make. And it gets more progressively harder the more complicated life decision it is. The more complicated the life decision is. What's the most complicated decision people make istikhara for? Marriage. Right? I know a friend of mine, I'm speaking from experience because, alhamdulillah, right? But I can tell you that a married friend of mine told me he prayed 100 rakats of salah before he said yes. And that wasn't for the girl, that was for himself. He's like, am I the right person for her? I was like, wow, okay. I prayed istikhara and, alhamdulillah. You mentioned that things just fall into place, right? Things have a way of working themselves out when it is meant to be for you. Or when you're on the right track, you will see that there is no hindrance, there's no obstacles, nothing. Alright? Istikhara, at the core of it, is basically you wanting to be confident in your decision. So how does it truly manifest itself? It might not happen instantaneously. It might not happen after one dua. It might happen after multiple du'as. But the idea is the more confident you are, or the more confident you want to be, the more istikhara that you do. Alright, so I hope that answers the question. How do you know if something is truly an istikhara sign? You have to ask yourself, am I really content with making this decision? Am I really content in moving forward with this? Right? Yes?
How do you know when to pray it again?
How do you know when to pray it again? People usually pray it at night, before they go to sleep, away from the... No, you don't have to open it for me. Away from the hustle and bustle of your daily schedule, right before you go to sleep, with a clean heart, clean mind, clear mind. You sit down and you give it its due time. It's not just, you bang 2 rakats and then you bang out 2 rakats and then... They have this saying, up, down, kiss the ground, back to town. Right? That's how our salah has become. But the reason why they say you should try to pray it at night is because you have more time at night. So give it your time. Think out the dua that you want to make. Truly ask Allah for guidance and not be like, yeah, just give me a sign. Right? Second question. What do you do if you have a parent that has given up on the mercy of Allah? Parentheses, blame themselves and believe that they have done too much to be forgiven. They don't pray or take fasting seriously. After making dua, how to advise them? This isn't limited to just specifically the person being asked for, but Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, one of the great scholars of the past, has a very famous quote. Shaitan will remind you of the mercy of Allah before you commit a sin, and will remind you of the wrath of Allah after you commit a sin. He will remind you of the mercy of Allah before you do something. When you're on the fence about it, 50-50, should I do, should I not do? Shaitan will say Allah's mercy is vast, is limitless. Allah can forgive anybody. It's just one sin. You commit the sin. Afterwards, when you automatically feel guilty about it, last week we talked about the nature of human beings. Our natures are automatically good. So when we disobey Allah, we feel a guilty voice, we feel a guilty conscience, we feel bad about it. And then shaitan at that particular point pounces and says, how could you disobey Allah? Don't you know how Allah hates disobedience? Or whatever. He will make excuses that will prevent you from asking for forgiveness. Allah in the Quran very famously says, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. That, O Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell my servants, O my beloved servants, that those who have oppressed themselves not to be despondent in the mercy of Allah. You have to reach a particular stage when Allah can say that you have oppressed yourself. When you have literally oppressed yourself, that is a very, very low stage a person can reach. Yet, even at that point, Allah is telling every single one of us, that do not become despondent in the mercy of Allah. Allah's mercy is always, always, always going to be far greater than whatever sins you can commit. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Because verily Allah forgives all types of sins. Allah is all forgiving, all merciful. So, the best thing to do after making dua for that person is to constantly remind them of the mercy of Allah. If a person believes that their sins are too large to be forgiven, it's a way of shaitan to not basically make you ask for forgiveness. Because if we say that our sins are greater than the mercy of Allah, we are putting a restriction on the mercy of Allah, which is impossible. No matter what you do, no matter what you commit, no matter which track you go on, at the end of the day, all Allah wants is for you to come back. That's all there is to it. And the road back is long. The road back is definitely hard. A lot of times we stumble. A lot of times we relapse based on whatever habits and practices that we have built up. But it's worth it at the end of the day. And the only way a person will be able to put themselves through that entire process if they keep on reminding themselves of the fact that Allah's mercy is vast. Allah's mercy is limitless. Allah does not forgive based on whims. Allah forgives people based on whoever asks Him. So, a person should A, be reminded of the mercy of Allah. That never to become despondent in the mercy of Allah. And B, to start connecting themselves back to Allah by worshipping Him. So, not praying often, not taking fasting seriously are symptoms of a larger cause. Larger cause, the greater cause is a person not believing in the mercy of Allah. If that is fixed, a person will automatically start doing whatever they are supposed to do. So, a person can still worship Allah but still be despondent in the mercy of Allah. That is also a wrong mindset. Right? But in order for a person to be convinced of the mercy of Allah, a person should start worshipping Allah. Slowly, slowly. Advise them. Once a week, tell them to come with you to the masjid. Take them for Jumu'ah. Take them for Jumu'ah. Try to connect them to your local community. Try to take them to events. Try to have them fast in Ramadan with you. Make it a group activity. I know it's mentioned parents, but it can apply to anybody. Even if it's a close friend who has fallen off the wagon and who has started going away from deen, and as a friend it hurts you. That is the best you can do. Not react negatively, not say astaghfirullah, not say that shaitan has gotten a good grip on you. They could be dealing with things that you have no idea about. The least you can do after making dua for them is to always remind them of the fact that Allah is merciful, always remind them of the fact that Allah's mercy is always limitless and much more vast than their sins, and to always encourage them to come back and make it a group activity. Take them with you to whatever you are doing as well. How do we deal with loved ones who Allah chooses not to guide anymore? Connected to the second question, but on a larger scale. A, never become hopeless in the mercy of Allah. Because guidance can come at any moment. A person can choose to repent and come back even at the last moments of their life. So, for us to give up based on a singular incident, or even granted numerous incidents, is to say that we know what that person will eventually be like towards the end of his time, or how they will eventually pass away. That's not for us to decide. Making dua is one thing, and constantly advising them is something else a person can do. Look at the Prophet ﷺ. One of his closest supporters was Abu Talib, his uncle, beloved uncle who stood by him even when the entirety of his tribe, entirety of Meccan society turned against him. And he passed away without accepting the Prophet ﷺ's message. And the Prophet ﷺ was devastated. He was grief-struck. He didn't know what to do. And the Prophet ﷺ said that, I will still ask Allah for forgiveness on your behalf. And Allah eventually revealed the verse that you cannot decide who you are going to guide. You cannot guide every person you love. Otherwise, every person would be guided. There's no way the Prophet would have passed away if given the choice of guiding every single person he talked to. There's no way the Prophet would have passed away without trying to reach out to every single person. But he was made to understand that ultimately guidance is by Allah, it's the decision of Allah. All we can do is convey the message of Allah in the best of manners, in the best of ways, and leave the rest up to Allah. Is it devastating to deal with something like that? Of course it is. Which is why we never give up hope in the mercy of Allah. Also understand that a lot of these questions sometimes might be specific to scenarios, and the only way to actually get an answer that works for you is to reach out to somebody who went through the same. I, as somebody who probably didn't have to go through the same, right? The closest I can come to relating to this question is when a good friend of mine who's actually a hafiz told me a couple years ago that, he doesn't believe in the Quran anymore, or he doesn't consider himself to be a Muslim. So it hurt, it still hurts, but alhamdulillah, I think over time he sort of came back, although he considers himself as an agnostic now. Simply the fact that there is no physical evidence that can disprove or prove the existence of Allah, so you don't say anything, right? So it hurts. It's somebody who I've known for a couple of years, and if given the choice, I would drag him, screaming and kicking to the masjid. But it's not going to help. The best I can do is always remind him. The best I can do is speak with him, and leave it up to Allah. Right? Next one. And this is a long one. I feel like even Muslims today, they don't take the rights of Allah seriously. For example, if this is, for example, you don't support homosexuality Islamically, but you support the legislation for non-Muslims, so is it okay to support sinful activities or policies just because it is more liberal, open-minded? How do we make connections with people with different mindsets while staying true to Sunnah? Not really. One thing that we have to remember is, while we should be hurt at the fact that Allah is not obeyed, we should never ever make the mistake of getting angry on behalf of Allah. When we say getting angry on behalf of Allah, we mean adopting the anger of Allah, if that's possible, by taking it as a personal affront. At the end of the day, every single act of obedience is for Allah, whether you like it or not. Every single act of disobedience is directly against Allah, whether it hurts us or not. When it comes to the issue of this, there are a couple of things to consider. Number one, there's the Islamic side and there's the political side. Let's go through the Islamic side. I think there are very few people who would argue that it is not a clear-cut issue when it comes to this particular matter. Majority of Muslim communities will point to the fact that the Quran makes it explicitly clear that it is an act of disobedience. Granted, this particular act of disobedience, like any other acts of disobedience, does not take you out of the fold of Islam. If a person drinks alcohol, if a person gambles, if a person takes drugs, it does not take them out of the fold of Islam. If a person fornicates, it does not take them out of the fold of Islam. If a person commits homosexual acts, it does not take them out of the fold of Islam. If a person has those thoughts, it does not take them out of the fold of Islam. The line that is drawn is when you start justifying particular acts that Allah has explicitly said no to in the Quran. Granted, people will make arguments for it, against it. That's up to them. But this is my answer. Right? Take it or leave it. So that's the Islamic side. It's pretty clear cut from what you can see in the Quran, what you can see in the Hadith. Politically, it's a little more different or a little more complicated. First of all, there's the issue of recognizing the fact that what gives a person the right to marry somebody of the same gender, that particular right allows you to worship the way you want to worship. Falls under the very general rubric of do what you wish. Right? As a minority community, the only way a person can stand up for their rights and make sure their rights are not violated is by showing solidarity with other minority communities. That's how politics work. You give and you take. It is very naive and foolish for anybody to think that you can expect people to stand with you and not stand by them when they are in need of solidarity. Right? That's how politics work. Whether or not you want to go that route is completely up to you. There's no way a person can say that if you support this particular right or even the general right of doing whatever you want is wrong. There's no way a person can tell you that. Because you always have to remember that although this country was not founded on Christian principles, majority of the people like thinking it was founded on Christian principles. Specific interpretation of Christian principles. Which means anything against that, including your own faith, including the right for you to build a masjid, including the right for you to wear hijab, including the right for you to do however you wish in accordance with your faith, is also under danger. So these are some of the considerations you have to keep in mind before you start attacking people who show solidarity with particular communities. If you don't want to say something, stay quiet. من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. Golden rule of the Prophet ﷺ. If you believe in Allah and if you believe in the last day, why believe in the last day? Because one day you will be standing in front of Allah and you will be held accountable for everything that you did, everything that you did not do. Which means, if you know that every single one of your words, every single one of your statements are going to be held up to scrutiny on the day of judgment, you should make sure that whatever you say is constructive, is helpful, is good. If you have nothing to say, rather stay quiet. Simple as that. It's more of a political question. I can't tell you how to live your politics. Right? Every single one of you here probably are not going to agree on every single political issue out there. That's a fact. So how you choose to operate as citizens is different. How you choose to act as worshippers to Allah should more or less be the same. Obviously, a person can make the argument that, well, you supporting such legislation is supporting sinful activities. Well, you're paying taxes. Your taxes are doing a lot of stuff that are not actually kosher. Right? Then what? So we can't cherry pick our issues and say, no, astaghfirullah, and all of that. And then in other issues, we're like crickets, quiet. No, but my point is that, for example, now voting is also mandatory, right? So people usually vote. Okay. It's the responsibility of you as a citizen to exercise your rights, which means if you want your country to go a particular way, it's almost fard for you to vote. Does that make sense? It's part of the responsibilities of you as a citizen. If you are part of a community where your voice counts, then it is part of your responsibilities to make sure that you actually use that voice. Yes, but I'm not getting into politics, but our politics is usually what? Lesser of two evils, right? So either way, you are going to support something which is not going to be kosher. Then what?
No, I mean, like, let's in the case
Okay.
of homosexuality.
Okay.
If you,
This isn't necessary to voting. This
no,
is like
it's
showing
like
solidarity with the
supporting
community.
the issue. That's a problem.
It doesn't have to support that. You don't have to support the issue directly. It's to show solidarity with the community in other issues. That's where the argument comes in. You're not going to really see like Hunter MSA at a pride rally.
Okay. But like, what do you mean solidarity?
So for example, as a minority community who is under mass surveillance, it's hypocritical of us to not support Black Lives Matter. Okay? Now let me finish. It's hypocritical of us to not support Black Lives Matter. Right? Why? Because they're a minority, we're a minority, we show solidarity with each other against the larger oppression. Now, if somebody makes the argument that same-sex marriage is given under the same right that gives you the right to also worship, what should your response be? Or what would your response be? Because your own right to worship is threatened.
No, you can't say anything about it. No, because like you said, lesser of two evils.
But will everybody agree with you? Because it's not just lesser of two evils, it's also the greater good. So what's the greater good?
Listen, I meant like in my mind when I hear like.
No, but that's the point with political issues. That there's no way that a person can say that this is 100% the way or the opinion that you should have, or you should follow. Because supporting an opinion or an issue is not necessarily supporting the issue itself, it's supporting the larger conversation. Supporting the larger conversation, right? So, what is the ruling of a person who leaves Islam? I've heard that is the death penalty after giving them a chance to come back. Many non-Muslims take this as proof that Islam is not a peaceful religion. Since the moment you go away from it, you will be killed. Okay, so yes, there are particular rules when it comes to dealing with apostates, but I think it's a very huge misunderstanding to say that the first reaction is to get them killed. Right? Because if a person leaves the fold of Islam, they're free to do whatever they wish as long as they don't cause trouble. As long as they're not actively trying to lead other people away. Ex-Muslim on TV. Right, given airtime because, mashallah, they're the token ex-Muslim. Right? Either way, we also have to remember that a lot of laws are up to the discretion of a qadi. Up to the discretion of an Islamic judge. Which, A, not applicable here, so why the question? B, if you're worried about a Muslim country misrepresenting Islam in this particular issue, we have other things to worry about that are happening in our Muslim countries. Right? This being the least of it. Right? So, to the point, A, that's not your first response. B, it's up to the discretion of the judge. C, basically the person has to just live their lives and not try to lead anybody else astray. We're not going to run afoul of the law. If you want to make the argument, Islam is a peaceful religion, why do we have that? Islam is a peaceful religion, but it's not a stupid religion, as blaze as that sounds. Politically speaking, why are people who politically dissent killed or imprisoned? What is the purpose of it?
They're in the state, they're in the security of the state.
Yeah. You don't want anybody to cause chaos. That's the ultimate purpose of it. So if you can do something for worldly matters, when it comes to the integrity of your community, when it comes to the iman of people who are not as strong as you, why wouldn't any community take steps? Again, not applicable in today's times, right? But some food for thought. There are three other questions on paper that was given last week. I'll get back to you next week on that. I have to check up some stuff. Okay. Questions that were sent to me on Facebook. Oh, Mamun said it. Y'all got essay questions. How does a Muslim deal with depression? Okay, how does a Muslim deal with depression? Depression and mental illness are taboo topics in our community, despite the fact that even many Muslims are afflicted by them. Oftentimes people are told that their iman is a problem, though there may be some truth in that. Iman sometimes is the one thing that God that gets one through the really tough times. Tough, spelled T-U-F-F, mashallah, Hunter tuition at work. Right. I'm just joking, don't worry. Writing in shorthand is not a sin, don't worry. It's just really weird seeing them on paper instead of on your phone. What does Islam say about depression? How does one deal with it? Please share some insight. Okay, first of all, I'm not a mental health expert, so I can't give any. No, seriously, I'm not a mental health expert, so I can't give you any constructive advice on this. But what I can say is, depression is certainly an illness that has to be treated as such. It cannot be considered a taboo topic in our community. I think it's really backward for us to do so. It's definitely not a sign of weak iman. It could be a manifestation of how Allah chooses to test a person. A person should not be told, go pray, make dhikr, you'll be fine. Depression is an issue that needs to be dealt with in a particular way. A person who is dealing with depression should make sure that they reach out to a mental health counselor, therapist, to make sure that they are getting some help. It's as simple as that. Your local scholar, if they're not certified, I wouldn't recommend going to them unless they actually have extensive experience dealing with it. That's all I can say about that. Can you explain more the way Allah's guidance and a person's choice to believe work, since they seem so contradictory? Okay. I'm trying to think of an answer that doesn't sort of devolve into a longer discussion. I watched this clip a couple of days ago about this Christian pastor that was trying to answer a question about why would God allow mass shootings. We've been having a lot of them the past couple of years, and very frequently is the scary part. It's so commonplace that numbers are just numbers in front of that. We don't see the faces, we don't know the names. They're just people killed, people shot, people injured. That's what it is, right? Either way, the questioner was asking, if God is so merciful, then why would He allow innocent children to be killed? Or why would He allow the shooter's trigger to work? If God is all powerful, He could have jammed the trigger. He could have made it such that the bullets didn't come out. If I'm not mistaken, the pastor's response was that if God forces you to make every decision, then you have no free will. If God's response to every single atrocity in this world was that He would circumvent the free will He gave you to do whatever you wish, then that is not giving you a choice. And that is ultimately what differentiates us from other creatures. That we have a conscious choice, a decision to worship Allah. Now, whether or not we are ultimately guided by Allah is in the knowledge of Allah. According to apparent signs, according to the fact that we've all prayed Maghrib together, according to the fact that we made a conscious decision to make sure that we prayed our Asr, that we prayed our Jummah, is a sign that, yes, inshallah, we are guided. But if you had the choice, you could have not prayed. If Allah forced you to pray, what would be the difference between somebody praying out of their own choice and somebody being forced to pray? Right? I don't know if that answers the question. I really doubt it. But I will move on because I can't think of anything else at this point. I'm being honest. So I'm not going to just give you like a very generic answer and hope for the best. Okay, next question. And this is something that all of you guys probably heard at one point in your MSA. Why do some people consider Ahl Kitab meat to be limited to kosher meat, while others feel that all meat sold in the US will fit the definition? Right? Zabiha, non-Zabiha. Right? The ultimate MSA debate.
Yes.
There are a couple of things to consider here. Okay, number one. If any of you want to have a very, very, very good summary of what the debate is actually about, There is a debate between Sheikh Yasir Birjas and Sheikh Yasir Qadi about this particular issue. It's two clips, both of them are around 8 minutes long, and both of them pretty much say what the proofs of each side are. I'll give you a summary of it, because that is what the issues come down to. Okay, so first of all, what does zabiha mean? Zabiha, according to our understanding, is a meat that has been slaughtered according to the conditions laid down in the Quran, laid down in the Hadith. Something which makes it halal. Non-zabiha, anything besides that. Kosher meat, Ahl Kitab meat, is basically meat that has been slaughtered by people of the book, mainly the Jews and the Christians. Let's go through each one of the issues. Hopefully I can keep my thoughts in sequence. Okay. If I'm remembering the debate card, I watched it I think a couple of years ago, maybe a couple of months ago. Sheikh Yasir Qadhi said that he is of the opinion, and this is the majority of the Hanafis, the most famous opinion of the Maliki school, majority of the Hanbalis, including Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, and the earliest opinion of Imam Shafi'i and the earlier scholars of the school. Majority of scholars will say that for a Muslim, they should only consume dhabiha, should only consume what we call halal. According to the other side of the argument, which has numerous scholars, even the latter scholars of the Shafi'i school, meat that is sold by the people of the book is kosher. Sheikh Yasir Birjas' argument was a little more nuanced because he differentiated between what type of meat. He said that lamb, goat, beef had to be dhabiha, and chicken can be from anywhere. Okay? And he goes into the details of what actually makes a difference. But going down to the core of the issue, we have two sides. Number one, we have halal meat, and number two, we have kosher. There is a verse of the Quran in Surah Ma'idah where Allah says, وَطَعَامُ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ حِلٌّ لَكُمْ. The food of the people who have been given the book is halal for you to consume, according to many mufassirin, according to majority of the interpreters of the Quran. The word ta'am, which literally means food, specifically refers to meat. The other side of the argument uses one particular verse where Allah says, فَاذْكُرُوا اسْمَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ, that whenever you slaughter, make sure that you recite the name of Allah upon it before you slaughter. Now, whichever argument you follow is up to you. And this actually leads us to our difference of opinion. Okay. I do want to mention a couple of things though, before we move on. If you were looking for a more passionate answer, sorry to disappoint you, but the fact of the matter is that both sides will have their evidences, both sides do have their arguments. It's up to you to follow the opinion given by the scholar you trust the most. It's as simple as that. I can't force you to follow an opinion. I'm not going to force you to follow an opinion because that's a waste of breath. You should follow the scholar that you trust the most and trust their knowledge into leading you right. Having said that, when it comes to the issue of halal meat, we are not at the level of the Jewish community where we have trademarked the word halal. In other words, somebody can plaster the word halal on a gyro card and say halal. Now, question comes in. If a Muslim with assalamu alaikum, with tajweed salam and kayfa haluka, tells you that what they sell is wallahi halal, 100% halal, akhi. Right? Can you trust the word of a Muslim? Can you exercise caution?
No. I mean, yes.
You could. Not because you doubt that person, but because you doubt the supplier. A lot of people get duped into believing that what they are selling is halal when it is actually not. So, you can exercise as much caution as you want. in your own personal practice, try to be as strict as possible. When it comes to other people, try to be as lenient as possible. Don't force people to come up to your level. Right? On the other hand, don't force people to change sides based on what you feel is more right.
I mean, even the halal meat supply is not.
There's also a limit to how much you can doubt without driving yourself crazy. No, and I'm being really serious because if you want, okay, carry on. There's something else.
I'm not saying from a theological perspective, you say you believe whoever says it's halal, and you just believe
Yeah.
that. But we know for a fact that everything is statutory requirements. So
Yeah, so if somebody says, so for example, my personal practice, I only go to the gyro carts if somebody I trust tells me that they're legitimate. That's my personal practice. If you go eat gyro in front of me, I'm not going to say don't. It's just my personal practice. It's how I feel I should try to eat. Right? Not necessarily doubting the word of the guy, but I don't know where the meat's coming from. He might be duped himself. Right? There's also the concern of, there's one hadith al-Qudsi. Hadith al-Qudsi, for those of you who are not aware, is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which was inspired by Allah but said in the words of the Prophet. So the Quran is also inspired by Allah to the Prophet but said in the words of Allah Himself. Right? It's not an approximation of what Allah is saying. It's the exact words of Allah. Hadith al-Qudsi is what Allah wanted to impart to us, but through the words of the Prophet. There's one particular Hadith al-Qudsi where Allah says that a person who is traveling disheveled, clothes are dirty, his hands are extended to the sky, like this. Right? And he is calling out to Allah, and how can I accept that person's dua when the clothes he is wearing is haram? When the food his body is nourished with is haram? How can I accept their dua? Why that particular description? That person is a traveler. A traveler's dua is readily accepted because of the hardships of travel. This person is disheveled, this person is dirty, this person is tired, and he's making dua, but Allah is saying, how can I accept your dua when everything about you is dripping with haram? There are two things pointed out there. Number one, there are two things that stick with you. One is your money. Number two, the food that you eat. The food that you eat doesn't exit your body instantaneously. Your body breaks it down, the nutrients gather in your body, it gives you energy to go do good. The money that you earn allows you to clothe yourself, allows you to buy halal food, and allows you to worship Allah and live on. But if every single means of you is dripping with disobedience, how do we expect any of our worship to have a positive effect on us? That's my take. That's why I personally, like many of my teachers and Sheikh Yasir himself, Qadi himself said that this is just what I feel is the best option for a person. You be as particular as possible with your food and with what you consume. Because it's a fact that you are not going to be the best of worshippers with boar's head in your system. Right? If every single bit of energy that you have is from haram, how do you expect any of your prayers to have a positive effect on you? There's a barrier. You can make an argument against it, that's fine. But this is my take. Right? We worship so much, but we don't see any tangible effect on it. When we talk about halal and haram, we hardly talk about something beyond that, which is tayyib. When Allah talks about halal in the Quran, He also mentions the word tayyib. The word tayyib means pure. Pure in our parlance could mean organic, but Whole Foods is organic, yes, but it is also oppressive, right? John Oliver did this wonderful segment about what? Asparagus water for $6, right? I don't want to say it's a scam, but it's a scam. Yes, there's a difference between the quality of foods you get at Whole Foods and from your corner grocery store. But at the same time, you cannot say that it's not just taking advantage and it's not just specifically aimed at a particular demographic. Anyway, when we talk about pure, we don't only talk about it in terms of production, we also mean it in terms of how it was grown, how it was raised, how it was harvested, how it was packaged, every part of the process. If your food is coming to you because of child labor, how ethical is that? We don't think about it. We don't want to think about it, right? We go to all these stores, and I'm guilty of it myself. We walk the malls, we will shop, and we will look at the labels, and we will say, oh, made in my home country. But do you stop to think how that particular piece of clothing that you're paying $100 for has been made so cheaply somewhere else? Child labor, right? But we don't think about that. Think about your food. Think about your food. Where does your food come from? There are very few people, and this is majority of us, myself included, who actually go to that step. But people who actually are at that step where they make sure that everything that they consume, everything that they wear is as ethical as possible, you can see the differences on them. There is a tangible difference in how a person is able to live. If everything that they are touching, everything they are consuming is not oppressed in any way. But we won't get into that. So we have Zabiha, Halal Haram, and we have people of the book. Now, all of us can agree that the standards of kosher are sometimes even more strict than halal, correct? Right? Sheikh Yasser Qadi has a wonderful article on muslimmatters.org about 7 to 8 pages, right? That actually breaks down every single one of their steps. And they actually have more steps than us in terms of how the meat has to be prepared, how it has to be cut, etc. So, meat of the people of the book is permissible according to the Quran. That's more easily applicable, in my opinion, to the Jewish community than to the Christian community. Right? So, just be cautious and not just say, oh, free for all. Right? Think of every opportunity to eat outside as an opportunity for you to be a vegetarian. Right? We eat too much meat as it is. We don't? Okay. Let's say we choose to abstain from all gyro cards, but a friend of ours doesn't. Is it okay if we were to purchase food for that friend or carry it for them, even though we choose not to eat it ourselves? Yes. Okay, the next few questions are actually all related, which is why I kept it to the end, and then we'll wrap up with a very simple question. Yes?
They're all related. Do you mind me asking a question?
I haven't said what question it is, so you don't know if your question is related.
No, like in line with what was just said right now.
Okay, what?
So, so about restaurants that sell alcohol.
Yeah.
What's the...
Yeah, so it's like halal food, but alcohol served, right? It's a personal preference. Whether or not you choose to eat there, that's up to you. It doesn't directly touch your food, but again, it goes up. It's more of an ethical issue than permissible and impermissible issue. Because first of all, they're not pouring Jack into your biryani. Right? It's separate. But there's also the case to be made of how ethical can your business be if you as a Muslim is selling alcohol? Are selling alcohol. Right? So, again, up to you. If you feel uncomfortable, don't go. Other people are not so are comfortable with that, that's fine. That's up to them. Okay, next 4 questions are actually all related, which is why I kept it to this point. I understand that all of the madhahib are derived from the study of the Quran and Sunnah and the actions of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, but how do I choose which ruling to follow? Can I mix and match? It's not a wardrobe. Okay, second question. I'll get back to that. Sorry, just giving comments. I hear, let me read the second question. I hear a lot of people talking about different madhabs and following different imams, but aren't we all just Muslim? Oh, I love that. Aren't we all just Muslim? What's the need for all this differentiation? I'd like to know more about that. Question number 3. We now have 2 separate times for Asr prayer. Not now, it's always been there. You just came to realize now. Please explain the full story of how Hanafi and Shafi'i came to be. Okay, if we follow Hanafi, should we always follow the time of Hanafi, or is it okay to follow the Shafi'i time and be okay with praying Asr at an earlier time than a Hanafi time? Furthermore, can we pray Asr interchangeably based on our schedule, that is class schedule, other things that we might have to do? So 4 questions, all of them are interrelated. I want to point out one particular thing. Number 2, are differences of opinion okay? I would argue that questions like this are so commonplace because we are of the understanding that unity means uniformity. We think unity means uniformity. If all of us are united, we should all act as one, think as one, talk as one, eat as one, dress as one, do everything as one. Unity does not mean uniformity. You and I can agree on a larger goal, but disagree on details. Right? Okay. So, having said that, let's go through the questions. First of all, understand that some of the questions are talking about the history of the madhahib, how the different schools came to be. That requires an entire weekend, without joke, maybe even more. But I will give you like a single summary. So I'll go through each one of the questions. I understand that all of the madhahib are derived from the study of the Quran and the Sunnah and the actions of the Sahaba, but how do I choose which ruling to follow? Can I mix and match? Follow whichever one you have been following all this time. I'll get to the can I mix and match part. So, if you grew up practicing a certain way, carry on doing that. Nobody's telling you to change. Nobody is telling you to change. If you are following a particular school or following a particular method, which is basically no school, do whatever you feel is the best thing to do based on not evidence, because you have to be at a certain level to sift through evidence, but again, trust the scholar that you trust the most. If you trust somebody and if you go ask them and if they tell you a particular opinion or a particular ruling, then follow that. You don't have to switch at every phase of your life. Right? That in Saturday, Sunday school, you were a certain way. Now in the MSA, you have to be a certain way. In your professional life, you have to be a certain way. No. Whatever you are doing, carry on doing it. If you are saying it's from the Quran and Sunnah, then, it's from the Quran and Sunnah. I hear a lot of people talking about different madhabs and following different imams, but aren't we all just Muslim? If you follow a different imam, you're not saying you're a different type of Muslim. Right? And okay, this is a little going off on a tangent, but let me finish. This is going off on a tangent, but I think it's a little relevant as well. And this is a personal opinion, so feel free to disagree. Trust me, I'm not going to say anything if you disagree. Aren't we all just Muslim when it comes to different sects, when it comes to different opinions, have one of 2 extreme reactions? One, aren't we all just Muslim wants to whitewash history, ignoring the fact that a lot of differences of opinion, whether it be communities, whether it be fiqh rulings, have history and precedence behind them. Your kumbaya of aren't we all just Muslim is basically wanting to ignore the reality. That's one extreme reaction. The other extreme reaction is going after every single difference that you have between yourself and another community, or yourself and somebody else of a different particular fiqh orientation, and having that up as a barrier and using that as a cause of disunity. The middle approach, I feel, should be acknowledging the fact that there are differences of opinion with regards to many things, and that we are all free to disagree with each other. How you choose to disagree, that's up to you. How you choose to disagree, that's up to you. Keep that in mind. So, what's the need for all this differentiation? I'd like to know more than that. Well, the differences come because of the practice of the Prophet ﷺ himself. If you were to open Bukhari, you will find contradicting narrations. If you open Sahih Muslim, you will find contradicting narrations. If you open Tirmidhi, you will find contradicting narrations. Okay. I'll get back to this question. How am I supposed to open a translation of a summarized Bukhari? Note the word summarized Bukhari. And extract a ruling from it. How am I supposed to make an informed opinion without consulting the numerous other books of hadith that have not been translated into PDF and are not easily accessible online for your Google arguments? Right? Where you have a tab open with summarization of Sahih Bukhari and you're arguing with somebody on Facebook. Right? And you're copying and pasting on their comments, right? That's what happens. It's a fact. Right? So, if you come across a hadith, and I'm giving you a real example. If you come across a hadith that says, the Prophet ﷺ, after eating something that has been touched by fire, which means, like, say for example, charred or, barbecued meat. That's the example that we can come up with. The Prophet ﷺ, wada'a, that particular word, after he ate meat that has been touched by fire. The word wada'a can mean two things. It could mean to wash hands, it could mean to make wudu. How do you choose what it means? Prophet ﷺ, or different, if you look at the hadith, you will see that flowing blood breaks your wudu. Another hadith says flowing blood does not break your wudu. One hadith says that touching a woman breaks your wudu. It's not sexist, I'll give you the reason why. And somebody else will say that touching a woman does not break your wudu. What's fascinating is the Hanafi school says touching a woman does not break your wudu, but flowing blood breaks your wudu. The Shafi'i school says flowing blood does not break your wudu, yet touching a woman breaks your wudu. Now, your mixing and matching is going to be based on what? Be honestly critical to yourself and say, is your mixing and matching going to be based on convenience or is going to be based on what a legitimate opinion is? Convenience. And how are you pushing yourself to be the best slave to Allah if you are always looking for convenience? If you're not pushing yourself to follow a particular set of traditions, you are always going to just change. Blood is flowing, you're feeling lazy to go make wudu. I'm a Shafi'i for today. You brush up against a classmate on the way to class. I'm a Hanafi for today, right? But that particular opinion, the word mas in the hadith, which means to touch, is also a metaphor for sexual intercourse. I'll be blunt, right? We're all adults here. So, if an opinion says that you need to make wudu, you need to take a shower, it is of the opinion that the Prophet, when he said mas, he actually meant sexual intercourse and not just, touching, normal touching, contact of skin. Alright, so that's what it is. I just want to clarify that.
I did have a question about that. So,
Okay.
But is it like handshakes? Is that like
Yeah.
per se?
Well, I mean, okay, so that's not just fiqh, that goes beyond fiqh, in the sense that, okay, so contact between men and women is not supposed to exceed certain boundaries. So even when you speak, even when you look at a particular person, you are supposed to do it in a way which is respectful and which is formal, right? Not so formal that you feel like you stepped out of Victorian England, right? But to the extent where you are not giving them a wrong understanding of your intentions. You want to make sure that everything is clearly laid out. You want to make sure that you are not giving a wrong impression. And number two, your interactions should never be a door of opening up to other things. All right? So, if something like that can be for speech and how you look at a sister or how a sister looks at a brother, then shaking hands is going a step forward. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to touch and you're going to jump into a closet or something. But fact of the matter is that shaitan will always look for particular avenues to entice you. It can be through your words, it can be through your contact, it can be through your comment of, mashallah, that hijab looks very nice today. Right? Or is that a new hijab style? Like, I haven't seen you wear that before, right? Like, what do you have to do with her hijab style? Like, why mention it in the first place? That's her choice, right? But no, you want to mention it because you probably want to seem very observant, right? But, understand that that's looked at as creepy as well. But at the same time, making sure that there are boundaries in interaction, and that definitely applies to handshake. Sometimes it's unavoidable. People usually don't get, so people who actually know, so if a non-Muslim man knows how Muslim women are ideally supposed to be, then they will not offer their hand. If a non-Muslim woman know how Muslim men are ideally supposed to be, they will not extend a hand. Most people don't know. Now, it's also it's rude to just leave a person hanging. So in that case, do a quick handshake. But usually what I try to do is I just do this. Looks very Eastern, but whatever. Right. So, what's the need for all this differentiation? We didn't make it different ourselves. That's how it was all the time. The schools came into play because they took the enormous corpus of hadith and traditions available to them and they made it into a particular system. Sometimes you will find two exact hadith which are on the same level of authenticity. How do you give a preference to any one of them over the other? The Prophet in a hadith said that the differences in my ummah are a mercy. But just like any good thing, if it's taken to an extreme, it can become a bad thing. Differences of opinion are fine. Differences of opinion are fine. Different ways of practicing are fine as long as it's rooted in the Quran and Sunnah. Don't make a big deal out of it. Right? Sorry to be glib, but unfortunately, this is sort of like the question everybody had. We have two separate times for Asr, so this is another example. If you look at the hadith, you will find one hadith that says the time of Asr begins when the object of a particular thing has its length of a shadow on the ground. So, what's the earlier Asr time now? Say 3:30. Just say 3:30. So at 3:30, if you were to place a bottle on the ground outside, it's Manhattan, so you hardly get any sun. But if you put something on the ground, the shadow of the bottle will be its length. According to one narration, that's the time of Asr. According to a second narration, the length of the shadow has to be double, which is the second time of Asr, which is the later Hanafi time for Asr. Right? But it's essentially one school following one opinion, the other school following another opinion. Now, why is it important for you to try your best to keep to a particular opinion? You are at home, you're watching a football game, and next thing you know, you haven't prayed Zuhr because you started watching at 1 o'clock. It's an afternoon game. You started watching at 1 o'clock. Next thing you know, there is only 2 minutes left for the first Asr time to start. I'm a Hanafi today. I will pray Dhuhr right now. And I will pray Asr at the second time. You haven't pushed yourself to pray Zuhr in the stipulated time because you were lazy. You see how it can be misused? Right? Okay, brings me to the last question. If we follow a particular opinion, and this is, I think, based on the Asr time, can we do it interchangeably? Some people will say no. I personally think that to the best of your ability, try to stick to one time. If sometimes you see that there's no way you can make it to your destination and pray Asr before the time of Maghrib starts. Pray Asr in the first time, even though you prayed in the second time. You rather pray than just miss it. Try your best, but if there's no way. So for example, if you're going to be in a class where the professor does not allow you to step off for 5 minutes, or if you're going to be stuck in the train, and you have to actually leave at a particular time to make it at a particular time, and you're going to miss Asr, then you should pray it on the first time and head out. But try your best to stick to a particular time, if only to keep yourself disciplined. So that whenever you are practicing, you can stand in front of Allah and say, "Oh Allah, I did it to the best of my abilities without worrying about whatever convenienced me." There are many conveniences, leniency in our practice, specifically in fiqh rulings. But at a certain point, we have to stop and ask ourselves, am I actually doing an extra effort in my worship, or am I always looking for the easy way out? Right? Am I always looking for the easy way out? Or am I always looking for an easy, or am I actually making an extra effort? Now, differences of opinion can also be a source of mercy. How? Because even fatwas, when verdicts are given, legal verdicts are not always given according to one particular school. Based on the circumstances, based on what could be the best ruling, it can be taken from another school. So, fiqh in and of itself is always changing. There is a specific set of rules, there are a specific set of principles which the different schools follow, and the key thing to remember, the differences 90% of the time are not regarding what is permissible or impermissible, it is regarding what is best to do. Is it more virtuous to raise my hands in prayer? Or is it more virtuous to not raise my hands in prayer? It is not a matter of permissibility or impermissibility. Granted, certain difference of opinion can have a legitimate effect. So for example, flowing blood can either break your wudu or can not break your wudu. But most of the differences are based on what is better to do. The Prophet ﷺ acted in certain ways. The Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum saw him at different times. Some of them saw him at doing a particular practice, others saw him doing another practice. Some saw him do it at a specific occasion, while others thought it was to be general. Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they fanned out. They didn't stay in Arabia after the Prophet's death. Wherever they went, they taught whatever they saw from the Prophet. Right? Which is why when collectors of hadith, Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, every single one of them, when they were traveling and collecting hadith, they came across contradicting narrations. When the Imams of fiqh, when they were collecting, when they were traveling, when they were basically formalizing a code, they also came across these contradictions. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that the Hanafi school is just one person, or that the Shafi school is just one person. No, they had students, they had councils, literally councils. They argued and debated over every single hadith that was put in front of them, and they codified a system based on what they felt would be the best thing to do. And you know what's the mantra of every single mujtahid? Mujtahid is somebody who is capable intellectually of extracting rulings from the Quran and Hadith. The mantra of a mujtahid is that I believe this opinion is true while the possibility of me being incorrect is also true, is also there. They never thought themselves to be 100% right. Imam Shafi'i, there's like a story of Imam Hanifa and Imam Malik rahimahullah arguing for hours at a masjid, and they walked out together. Because that was the point. Yeah, we have difference of opinion, but we're not going to let that cause like strife and division. Right? Think of every single nationally known speaker and scholar that we all love. Do you think all of them practice the same way? Do you think all of them hold the same fiqh opinions? No, but do you see them catfighting all the time? They don't. They don't, right? That's the point. That when you have differences of opinion, you are respectful about it. Difference of opinion is a fact and part and parcel of life. If you want utopia, wait for Jannah. If you want utopia, wait for Jannah. This world is always going to have different opinion. What our responsibility is, we make sure that legitimate differences of opinion are kept at that and understood as that. Prophet ﷺ in a hadith also talked about a mujtahid, a person who extracts a ruling or comes up with a new ruling. If they are right, they will get two rewards. Once for the effort and once for getting it right. If they are wrong, they will still get the reward for making the effort. The efforts are not basically to waste, will not go to waste. 3 more questions. When it comes to eating as ethically as possible, where do we draw the line? At least in the dairy industry, most of the practices are most of the products are produced through the abuse of animals, but we can't all be vegan. No, I can't be vegan either. How can we feel all right eating these things when we have no other or very few way more expensive options? This is a legitimate question because not everybody can afford to do the grocery shopping at Whole Foods 3 times a week, right? We try to the best of our abilities, and not only say we want to do better, but actively take steps to make sure that we can change some of those practices, right? So, I think it's kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but PETA, are they only for pets or all animals?
All
animals, right? So, I'm not saying go as extreme as PETA, right? I really don't like their methods. But if we want a better world, we have to work for it, which means actively going out there and making sure that our money actually does the talking. So, for example, making sure that you support local markets, farmer markets, things like that. When it comes to mass-produced products, sometimes it's very difficult for any person to stay away, unless you live on a farm and you can milk your own cow. Right? So there's no clear-cut way to that. Maybe the things that we can make a difference with, we try to do it with that. Right? Might not be possible with everything. What is the ruling on a female having intercourse before marriage, and what is the ruling on cheating on your husband? Okay, so having intercourse before marriage is the same for men and women. It's considered a major sin. A person should make tawbah and just keep it to themselves. There's no need to sort of advertise that for guys especially, because we love to talk about conquests, right? No matter what your conquests are. And if our attitudes towards guys are different than girls, then we need to take a real hard look at ourselves. And what is the ruling on cheating on your husband is the same as cheating on your wife, which is haram. Right? Obviously, beyond that, if you have a conscience, and this is not specific to the wife, it's also specific to a cheating husband. If you have a conscience, that you will feel guilty, and you have to make the decision whether or not it's the best choice to actually come clean. Right? So I can't give you advice on that. It's best to actually speak to a marriage therapist before you actually take any step forward, because it is a life-changing decision and could be in many ways. How do you respond to people? How do you respond to people who sin openly, but then it was crossed out? How do you respond to people, or to men, who criticize women for not wearing the hijab, yet they continue to gossip, backbite, slander them? Don't worry about responding to them, because, first of all, to the guys, it's not your responsibility to make sure somebody else wears a hijab. Worry about yourself first. On the Day of Judgment, Allah is going to first ask you whether or not you prayed, and whether or not you backbited, whether or not you gossiped about somebody else, before asking, why didn't you tell that sister in your MSA in your junior year to wear, or like not wear hijab or something. Amar bil ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar, something that we touched on last week, enjoining good and forbidding evil, comes after making sure that you are on the right track. You can't be in the middle of the road telling people to drive safely. Right? You have to make sure that you're in a secure place before you are actually trying to put people on board. Why do they say in airplanes, make sure you put the oxygen mask on yourself first before trying to help others? You're no good fainted. You're not going to do anybody any good if you faint. Make sure that you actually help yourself first before you help somebody else. And I think that should be the underlying principle when it comes to specific issues. Let me tell you something. Out of our community, the sisters are probably they are the most visible members, visible Muslims. Right? They're the most visible Muslims. It takes immense courage for a sister to wear hijab, however way they wear it. We can have difference of opinion on how it should be worn, but the fact of the matter is that the mere act of which, if you have been keeping up with the news in the past 2 days, the Department of Defense, passive terrorism, right? It's not said that about your beard. That singular act shows more solidarity with the community than your beard does. You know why? Because it's fashionable to wear a beard. You have a big beard, mashallah, you're the lumberjack type. Right? You're the lumberjack type. We fit in. People can look at our skin tone and might be a little confused, like Middle Eastern or Italian, right? Can I racially abuse them or not, right? That's usually the question that comes in, right? You Muslims, right? But the point of the matter is that sometimes it's just none of our business. We don't know why somebody is choosing to wear it or not, and we leave it up to them and to Allah. It's a personal decision between them and Allah. So, stay out of it. Are there certain jobs or professions that are more suitable for Muslim women? Are there professions or work requirements that are ideal? Okay. This is obviously going to be a biased opinion, right? But feel free to take it or not if you want to. I think every job or every profession that you go to, especially if it's a male-dominated field, right? Like any area of science or business or whatever, you're always going to be interacting with people of the other gender. I think more so than looking at particular professions. Yeah, with regards to profession, you can say, will it require me to step out of the boundaries of what is expected of me as a Muslim? You can make that decision yourself. But more than that, when it comes to work environment, I think we can all agree that there are certain things for men and women that should be there. That there will be people of the other gender, right? It's how we interact with them, how we hold ourselves, and how we make sure that our actions and words and everything are kept in check. Right? So that's the underlying principle. Yes, there are some, like for example, an all Muslim environment might be more comfortable in some ways, but might not necessarily be the most realistic option for every single person. But when it's an environment or a job, which is 99.9% of them, that requires you to interact with the other gender, or even having to make you step out of your comfort zone or whatever is expected of you, just try to make sure that your own actions and words are kept in check. That's all I can say. Are you always supposed to take the stricter opinion? Isn't the point of fatwas varying from country to country is to make it useful? I know who wrote this question. Sources of mercy, right? Yeah, even before I read your name. I don't know why you wrote your name. Anyway.
So I wrote it because...
Yeah, okay, you didn't have to say it. You didn't have to say it. Are you always supposed to take the stricter opinion? Yes and no. what did I say? It's a personal thing. If I want to be strict upon myself, you can't tell me anything. But I have no right, or at least I can't force you to take the stricter opinion with me. The differences between fatwas are not country to country. It differs from person to person. The Prophet ﷺ would give 2 different answers to the same question to different individuals. Why? Because his answer was tailored to the person. Fatwas are not general, which is why you're not supposed to just open up a book of hadith and give a ruling. Because you have to consider the circumstances of every single individual before you actually give an answer. If you look at books of verdicts, if you look at books of fatwas, you will always see that the question is attached to the answer. In the old days, whatever paper or parchment the question used to come written in, the answer used to be written on the same paper. You know why? Because the question was just as important as the answer. Because it was tailored specifically to a person. So, difference of opinion, sources of mercy, whether or not you choose to follow the stricter opinion is completely up to you. You can't just force somebody else to do it. Yeah.
No, so the reason why
Okay.
I said that is because I have a part 2 I'm too lazy. to
Okay.
write. So I'm not sure what the exact hadith is, but I've heard it somewhere, sometime, a couple of times. It's the idea that as Muslims we shouldn't put a name to ourselves. Like there's a certain hadith that says you're not supposed to. Again, very general. Feel free to tell me I'm doing wrong. But there's a hadith that I've heard that says you're not supposed to call yourself something other than a Muslim.
Yeah.
Like in terms of how you label yourself.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile that with the fact that there are different madhahib people might follow?
Well, I don't introduce myself as I'm a Hanafi.
Yeah.
I say I'm a Muslim. But when it comes to how I choose a particular method of worshipping or what opinion to follow when it comes to matters of fiqh, I follow a certain orientation of a school taken from the Quran and Sunnah. Right? So, if a person thinks that that is basically confining yourself or dividing yourself into another separate group, that's wrong. When people say the correct opinion or correct view, what does it mean? In terms of fiqh, correct opinion or correct view means the majority. Means the majority. Because the idea has always been that the majority of the ummah cannot err together. So, which is why minority opinions, though legitimate, are always looked at in a particular way, in a particular light. Sometimes it also refers to the fact that while there are 2 opinions, one has been legitimately debunked. Fiqh-wise.
Okay, I may be wrong, but from my understanding, isn't it like Ibn Taymiyyah sort of goes away from I mean, at least in some issues the majority, and then now we're just well, Ibn Taymiyyah says this, and it's a big thing.
Yeah. So, in every school, you have certain scholars who have gone beyond the parameters of their school of opinion. In cases of that, I don't know. Again, it depends on who you trust. If the person you trust is quoting Ibn Taymiyyah, then all well and good. What advice can you give to a college student to keep a great balance between deen and doing well in school? Because oftentimes exerting in one, the other suffers, if I'm reading correctly. For example, you stay up late for an exam, you crash the next days. And because of that, you can't read Quran consistently. Okay, so it's not just doing well in school, and please let this be the last question. Right? It's not, I have one more question left on the thing and then we'll be done. It's not only about balancing, okay, so in your particular phase, it's doing well in school and keeping up with your deen. For after you graduate, it will be keeping a balance between your job and deen. When you get married, keeping a balance between your family responsibilities, your job, and your deen, and your family, your other family. Right? Life is all about making sure that you give your due wherever it's meant to be given. If we are running out of time, or if we feel that we do not have enough time in the day, there are one of two reasons. One, we are misusing our time, which means that 3 hours you set aside for Netflix every day is bekar, is useless, right? I'm not saying don't watch Netflix, but in order of priorities, it's not something you have to do every day. The second reason why you feel that you might not have enough time, you might be trying to do too much, and that's a fact. From a very young age, we are pushed to overachieve, right? Kids as young as 5 are signed up for play dates. This is taken directly from a comedy segment of George Carlin. He actually died. He's one of my favorite comedians because he was brutally honest. He's an atheist, but he was brutally honest. So, yarhamukallah. So, Carlin said that kids from a very young age, their time is compartmentalized, managed to an extent where everything is scheduled. Whatever happened to sitting in the backyard and playing with a stick? Right? Everything is about play dates. Everything is about making sure that my kid is getting the optimum amount of attention. Right? That, I as a parent have read 10 books on parenting, and I've, sat with other parents, and my method of parenting is the best, and I expect results. Right? Your child is not a lab. Right? It's a human being. It's a human being. He or she is a human being. They're going to react like a child. They're not going to react like how your parenting book said. So from a very young age, we're sort of pushed, right? And this is more in certain communities than other communities. Dance lessons, piano lessons, extracurricular activities, sports, couple of sports, clubs, and all before you even go to kindergarten, right? When you're in high school, what's the pressure? Maintain a high GPA, make sure you ace your standardized tests, make sure you're a class president, make sure you run 3 clubs, make sure that you started a charity organization, make sure you have extracurriculars as long as you're armed, make sure that you are class valedictorian or salutatorian, all in preparation for what? To get into the best colleges, which usually doesn't happen. Or, no, that's a fact. If every single private school had the choice, they could, and this is based on a real statistic, if they wanted to, every single incoming freshman of every single Ivy League or private school could be a valedictorian. But learning is not going to happen when everybody's the same, which is why you get a certain number of incoming freshmen who are student athletes, who are only there in the school not to get the degree, but to make sure their football team goes somewhere in the next 4 years, right? John Oliver did this beautiful segment on the NCAA on his Last Week Tonight. Look it up. It's wonderful. So, we are pushed from a very young age to overachieve. We come into college, that mentality is there. We have to have a perfect GPA. We have to be part of a couple of clubs. We have to make sure that we have a social life. We have to make sure that we have a part-time job. All of that put together overwhelms a person to the extent where we are not effective in anything. Sometimes it's unescapable or inescapable for a person to not work while they are studying. If you have to support your family, you have to work, right? And the people who are doing are phenomenal individuals. Like, they're supporting their family and they're making sure they keep up with their studies. For those of us who are only working, or for those of us who are only in college and have nothing to worry about regarding studies, we live with our parents, our rent is taken care of, electricity is taken care of, food is taken care of, our FAFSA money is coming in, we are spending it on shoes, we are spending on shopping, we are spending on $5 lattes every single day. We have no other reason to complain. If the only thing you have to worry about is studying and 5 times prayer. Because when we talk about worshiping Allah, what do we actually mean? Taking care of obligations, but what in particular? What comes every day? Salah. You can't handle 20 minutes of prayer in 24 hours? How bad are you at misusing your time? This isn't an attack on the person who wrote the question. It's a general question for all of us, right? If we have a hard time making sure that we have half hour or 45 minutes of our entire day to pray salah properly, and we are feeling rushed. When we talk about dini obligations, you don't have to manage your fast. You just stay hungry. That's half of us when we were in college, right? You just stay hungry. When it comes to particular things, you don't do it in college. You do it elsewhere. You don't give your zakah here. Or you don't do your hajj here, whatever. When we are talking about dini obligations while in school, for the most part, 99% of the time people are talking about prayer. After prayer, it could be your daily practice. For example, you have a habit of reciting 5 pages of Quran every day. Space it out. Read 1 page on your way to school, 1 page after Zuhr, or whenever you have some free time during the day, and the rest when you're on your way back home. Nobody can tell you how to make your schedule, but if you want to keep a balance, make sure you are giving ample time to everything. And if you feel like you are running out of time, despite the fact you are not doing much, like you're only a student. And when I say only a student, I mean you are taking care of a full load of classes, plus coming to the odd MSA event or showing up at the odd MSA event, and you're not working, and you still can't manage your time, then either you are doing something else too much, or you are misusing your time. Even the time that you have in between classes, that 2 hours that everybody loves in the beginning of the semester, but wants it to be longer towards the end because you're rushing to make deadlines, right? That 2 hours, don't waste it. Use it for something constructive, right? Instead of just hanging out, chilling out, make a schedule for yourself and allocate free time for yourself. When it comes to doing things every single day, you have responsibilities to Allah, you have responsibilities to your family, and your family includes siblings and your parents. You have responsibilities to your job if you have a job, but very seldomly do we realize that we have a responsibility to ourselves. We have a responsibility to make sure that we are functioning properly. Because you are no good to yourself, first and foremost, if you can't function properly. You have to make sure that you give some time to yourself. And 5 hours of Netflix is not really unwinding. Correct me if I'm wrong. You feel more tired after binge watching than doing something else. So if that's your way of allocating time, maybe you should try to split it and do something else to make sure that you're actually unwinding and that you're actually taking care of yourself. Yes?
Yeah, I just have a question to ask.
Okay.
It's not really my question, it's someone's question.
Okay.
But they were asking, like, so how there's like males and females, like at a workplace.
Yeah.
So they wanted to know, is there like a restriction on how much a female should be making as compared to a male or husband or something?
No. I think
Are there like
it's
financial rules for how much a male or female?
no.
Because this person read something, and they were just unclear, so they made me ask.
Okay. First of all, it's
They read They read somewhere like a female is supposed to just stay at her house and
Okay.
not go to work.
Oh my
And
God.
this person just wants to know the answer.
Okay.
Like, that's basically.
okay. So is there an opinion that says it is preferable for women to take care of domestic responsibilities? Yes. There's no denying that fact. You can't hide from it. But it is also a reality of the times that we live in that many people either have to work, or even if they don't have to work, with regards to sisters, even if they don't have to work, as a community, if we are to move forward, we need all hands on deck, if that makes sense. And I think it's fair to say that if a person chooses to stay at home, nobody can fault them. If a person chooses to work, nobody can fault them, as long as we make sure that we know why we are doing what we are doing. A woman should make as much as a man is making for the same amount of work. It's as simple as that, right? I don't think it's something that takes a genius to figure out, right? But the fact is that, okay, if you're going to count like with regards to hours, like somebody works part-time, somebody works full-time, then yes, automatically you're going to make less. But if it's for the same amount of hours, the same job, same qualifications and everything, then yeah, there's no reason why she should make less.
It was just a fear inside of her head.
No,
That
it's
she
fine.
was like, maybe I have to be.
No, no, it's fine.
That's
That's
why
fine. No, they don't. They don't.
If I decide to take a stricter opinion on something,
Yeah.
for example, like eating tabiha, but that ends up affecting my family in terms of their decisions on what they eat. Because if I eat at home, then the meat that we buy, I would want it to be halal, that way I can eat it.
Yeah.
Right. So then that means that at home that they would have we would have to go through extra effort to buy halal meat that we could eat it, but then that ends up like limiting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In a way, so making it stricter on myself would end up making it slightly stricter on other people. So as a mercy to them, should I make it more lenient on myself, or should I just continue?
Yeah, you can.
to do it?
You can.
Which one would be better?
Well, it depends on the family, because not all families are going to be easy to convince. Sometimes you can get them on your side,
If they already,
right? Other times it's not possible. When it's not possible, then yeah, join them, and whenever you can, follow your own opinion, right? But since there is a legitimate difference of opinion, rather not make a big deal out of it, especially if it's going to turn out to be like a cause for strife in the house. Last question. What are the etiquettes of seeking knowledge? The etiquettes of seeking knowledge. First etiquette, and this is just a random list, but hopefully it's something constructive. First etiquette of seeking knowledge is to remind yourself that you know nothing. Surah Baqarah starts with Alif Lam Mim, right? A word that nobody knows the meaning to. Allah reminds us from the very beginning that if you want to submit to me, not only theologically but intellectually as well, you are nothing. You know nothing. So the only way a person will actively and constructively make it productive for themselves to seek knowledge is by reminding themselves of the fact that they know nothing. Next step, after you know something, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ, there's always somebody who knows better than you. Anytime you want to remind yourself of that, walk into a library. Just walk into a library. And you will feel a collective or, a representation of the collective accumulated knowledge of human history, which you know only what your Google can bring up, right? Because we're too lazy to read books. After you have attained some knowledge, remind yourself, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Why am I seeking knowledge? Is it to better myself? Is it so that I can become a better servant of Allah? Is it so that I can worship Allah better? Or is it that I have a hadith handy just so I get into an argument with somebody else? It's a fact. Am I memorizing the Quran because sisters love hufad? Right? Am I learning how to recite tajweed because I see how sisters act over Hafiz Wissam Sharif? Sorry, keep on picking on me. But that's the fact, right? Like, why are you going to go spend 7 years of your life in an institution learning about Quran and Hadith if ultimately your goal is just to become a national speaker? Where's your sincerity in that? Because you think it's cool. Where's your sincerity in that? The first intention that a person should have when they are seeking knowledge is to always become better in terms of their worship to Allah, in terms of their obedience to Allah. Number 2, to benefit others sincerely, not so that you can show off your knowledge, not so that you can always get into debates and show off how much you can reference. I think that's the top 3 etiquettes. Number 4, prepare to sacrifice something. It's a byproduct of our age that just because we can pull up everything on Google, that we forget how hard it is to actually learn. Right? Have you ever tried using only source references that are not found on the internet? When you had to go into the library, pull 30 books, right? Comb through the catalogs, try to find that particular exact article, right? Then you know how hard it is to actually learn. There is a very famous saying in Arabic that knowledge will not give you even a little bit of itself until you have sacrificed your entire being in the pursuit of it. Imam Bukhari didn't become Imam Bukhari by just sitting at his home. Traveled far and wide collecting every single hadith he could. Imam Abu Hanifa did not just become Imam Abu Hanifa by just opening up a school and teaching a bunch of students. Any of our shuyukh that we look up to today did not become who they are by just sitting at home and Googling everything. They went out, they strived, they sacrificed. Many of them stay away from their families, right? You have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice. So those are the 4 things that I can think of. Hopefully they will be of some benefit, inshallah. Yes? Huh? Third one is somebody always knows better than you. No, third one was sincerity. So first one is alif lam mim, you know nothing. Second one, wa fawqa kulli dhi ilmin alim, that somebody knows better than you. Literal translation of that verse is that above somebody knowledgeable is somebody more knowledgeable. Number 3, innamal a'malu binniyat, be sincere in why you are acquiring your knowledge. Number 4, be ready to sacrifice.
I mean, like realistic word, like better, like to increase yourself, like better worship Allah, to benefit others.
Oh, yeah, I think I only said those 2. All right. Okay. Damn it, I should have been a little quicker. Carry on. What's the question?
I want to go back to his question.
Okay.
Because he didn't get a clear answer.
Okay. I didn't? Okay.
Well, I think maybe you misunderstood his question. What he's trying to say is, it's preferred that wife stay at home, but there's some that fear that if they don't work or start a career at least, that if the husband leaves them, then they're left.
That's a legitimate reason to work.
So,
There's no reason why a woman shouldn't be independent.
what about like when you have children?
That's up to the collective decision of the parents. If somebody feels that, yes, I want to spend more time with my children and I'm not going to work for the next few years, that's up to them. If somebody wants to go back to work, that's up to them. I can't tell you what to do.
We should talk about it before marriage.
Well, honestly, it's something that could become a particular issue, right? So, yeah, discuss it, see what the stance is. I'm speaking a little from experience, right? But when you are looking to marry somebody, ultimately the tangibles are less important than the intangibles, right? Yeah, I mean, physical attraction, certain things are a factor, definitely. I'm not denying that. In the long run, what's going to matter is how do you respond to anger? How do you respond to tough situations? What do you do when you're in a tough spot? How do you handle your finances? What are your expectations as a wife? What are your expectations from your husband? How many children do you want to have? Do you want to have children? Are you open to adoption? What are you going to do with your career? Are we always going to put family before career? Those are the things that actually matter. When you're going to end up 10 years down the line and those are the issues that you didn't discuss and your entire thing was just about making sure that you had the perfect centerpiece at your wedding, it's ultimately a failure. Right? So, yeah. It's something that should be discussed beforehand. Yes? Okay. Yes. Okay, so when it comes to matters of what we call nafaqah, expenditure for the house, it's the responsibility of the man. So even if the wife works, she is the owner of her money, and if she wants to pool it, for the household, that's up to her. So again, that's something that should be discussed beforehand. Yes.
Is it permissible in Islam to control how much kids
You don't really have control.
I want my answer. Disclose before marriage.
You can make the argument, yes, but you also have to understand if Allah wishes to grant you children, it will come regardless of what you plan. Right? Sometimes it's rooted in legitimate concerns. Is my paycheck big enough for 2 babies? But every person comes with their own sustenance. That's a fact. You're not going to provide for them. Allah will. You will see things being provided when a child is born. That's a fact. Right? But yeah, you can have a number. Single child, soccer team, it's up to you. Right? Last question.
Alright, so we're all students here, which usually requires to take student loans, and there's no relevance to be it's a very major thing. I feel kind of conflicted about that. Some people might say it's a necessity, so you can work. I'm just wondering, can you give me some insight towards that?
Student loans. Last question, please don't raise your hand after this one. Because I'll feel bad if I say just don't answer you. Okay, student loans. It's a reality that higher education is the step forward for the progress of our communities. That's also not going to happen if all of us become doctors. But it's also a reality that higher education is very unaffordable for many people. Right? So, does that mean a person shouldn't learn? No, they should. But before you take student loans as a first option, it should be the last option. Which means, number one, you try to make sure that you get private loans from family, community members, people who you trust, people who trust you, and who you can say that I will pay you back. Right? Working yourself to make sure that you take care of your tuition as much as possible. Making use of resources of financial aid, grants, scholarships, applying to as many scholarships as possible. After that, if anything is left over and you have student loans, to try your best to make sure that you pay it off before interest starts accruing. It also means that this is a short-term fix. Our communities, as we need to have resources that actually cater to this specific problem. There are organizations, Islamic Scholarship Fund, a continuous charity, inshallah, a chapter of which is opening in New York soon. A continuous charity is basically a non-profit student loan organization that gives student loans to Muslim students who are involved in their communities.
What was the first one you mentioned?
Islamic Scholarship Fund, ISF. Right? But until we actually have the resources to meet the amount of demand we have in our communities, we're always going to be answerable to Allah because we're not doing anything about it. So don't make it your first option, make it your last option. So it's an unavoidable thing, but it's a reality right now. Right? Okay. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.